Hi, my name is David Wetton, and welcome to the Now is the Time for Conscious Leadership podcast. The intent of this podcast is to encourage you as a leader to embrace conscious leadership by giving you access to some of the world's leaders in the field of conscious leadership, both in practice and in thought. My heartfelt wish is that you leave this podcast feeling inspired with ideas to take away and implement in your business or organization to make a real difference in our world. And my guest today is Clare Norman. Her personal philosophy is that leadership development can unlock human potential, fostering enhanced behaviours, culture change, and significant business impact. Clare, through Clare Norman Coaching Associates, creates coaching cultures through one-to-one and team executive coaching, action learning, mentor coaching, and supervision. One of her statements is actually, as the organization, they strive for a world where everyone is contributing to their maximum potential, aligned with their strengths, passions, and values, which I think is a fabulous statement. Now, before Clare Norman Coaching Associates, during her early 16-year connection at Accenture, she was their global leadership experience architect, where she provided executive coaching, coaching supervision, and action learning to all levels, including managing directors. Her work there was considered cutting edge and won a number of external awards for Accenture, including the Brandon Hall Excellence Award, the Best in Coaching and Mentoring, for its impact on individuals' leadership and relationship building. And whilst at Accenture, she provided subject matter experience for managers as coach training and helped shift their culture from command and control to using more of a coach approach to leadership. Indeed, Clare set up and provided thought leadership for a coaching community of practice, and over 650 people joined in the first week, suggesting that there was an appetite for a coach approach to leadership, and this appetite is high. Clare now takes her cutting-edge expertise and experience into her organization, where she helps passionate people to live their best story in times of change and in times of stability. And I love that. And I need to draw a breath here and say it's a real privilege to welcome you to the show, Clare.
Thank you so much, David. It's lovely to be here and to hear all of those things said about me.
You're welcome. And that is my cue that it's time for you to take 5, your take on 5 conscious leadership questions. So my first question is, what does conscious leadership mean for you?
It's something about making conscious choices. So whether that's to do with how we lead ourselves in our own life, or how we lead other people, how we lead our organizations, how we lead society, making conscious choices about how we do that. So I was working with a coach this morning, and she was talking about her shape and who she is to the world and how she wants to come across to the world. So she was making some very conscious choices about how she was aligning to this shape that felt so fundamental to who she is. And so I love doing that kind of work where people really want to understand themselves and understand how they want to lead their own life, how they want to tell their story through their life. And there's also something else for me which ties into my background in employee experience, which is about helping other people to have a great experience, the experience that they want to have, not the experience that we think they want to have. So there's something there as well about asking people questions about what it is that they want and need from their career or their career path, and then providing them with those things as a conscious leader, because we are much more conscious about what they want rather than assuming they want the same as we wanted when we were at their stage of development. So there's that consciousness as well, being very conscious about our own choices, but also being conscious about other people perhaps wanting to make different choices to ours. And therefore, as a leader, we need to help them to articulate what it is that they want from their experience, and then to help them to discover that experience, and for us to give them that experience where it's in our gift to do so as their leader. So in order to make conscious choices, we need to take time to think. And so this is where the coaching part of me comes out, because of course that is all about helping people to think, and to think for themselves. Think about what is it I want, not what do I think other people want me to be able to do, but what is it I want, and how do I want to be in this world. It reminds me of some coaching I had about 10 years ago, probably more than that actually, 12, 13 years ago, where I realised through that coaching that I wanted to be a sunbeam to the world. And so you might have seen on my website there's a sunbeam theme. And in fact, on my book, which we'll talk about later, there is a sunbeam on the front cover, because that is who I aim to be. That is a very conscious choice. And that sunbeam reminds me that I am here to nurture people, to shine a light for them, to provide them the warmth within which to grow. So that's my conscious choice, which came out of me receiving coaching many, many years ago.
It's beautiful. I really love that answer, and I think not just for the coaches listening, but for those who are managers or the executives, this sense of coaching, of, as you said, being, the word that came to me, this awareness that actually it's not just actually trying to fix something or actually saying what they think they want, but actually it sounds like actually listening to myself and listening to others to actually bring out a much richer sense of I don't know, it just seems more empowering to me when I hear you speak about conscious leadership.
Yeah, and I think there's also something about listening to the system as well. What does the system need? What does our world need from us right now? So that it doesn't become this egotistical, it's all about me. It's about me in the context of this world and this society, and how we interrelate to create a better world.
Beautiful. That's another key word, isn't it? Interrelate. And before I go on to the next question, the other thing that came out as you were speaking for the question was, I was listening to you really speaking about connecting with that others, a sense of meaning and purpose. So who am I being? What do I want to do here? I love your aspect of, there's a sunbeam, and so actually each one I think has this unique, probably meaning and purpose, which I think if we connect with that, there's something transformational that happens for me.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference when we're coaching people between the people who are trying to tackle task and actions and just figuring stuff out, problems, as compared with doing that in the context of who am I and how do I want to be as I am carrying out those things. So that's where the transformation, I think, happens, is when we're focused on the being, our being. Who do we want to be to the world?
Yes, beautiful. So actually you've segued me beautifully into the next question, who do you want to be in the world? So my next one is, how do you express conscious leadership through your work?
So it would be around reflective practice. Whether that's me in reflective practice, because I've got to practice what I preach, around me having a coach, me having a coach supervisor, me having a mentor coach, and also me offering those to other people. So providing coaching, one-to-one team coaching, or action learning, which is a many-to-one kind of coaching. Also through supervision of coaches, helping them to be even better coaches than they are today, and that's the same with the mentor coaching that I offer. So the mentor coaching is about helping people to stay sharp, helping coaches to stay sharp as they can be in the way that they coach. And then supervision is about staying safe and sane as a coach. But there's also something, broader than that in all of the coaching that I do. It is about helping people to stay sharp or to resharpen their edge, but also to stay safe and to stay sane as well. And so I kind of see a pattern with all of that.
Yes, beautiful. And I can hear through that work a sense of helping people to be aware of where they are and perhaps what's happening. And how do you find, I guess, something that's used a lot, I guess, in conscious leadership would be the use of emotional intelligence. How does that play a part in what you're doing?
I don't specifically talk about emotional intelligence, but that's definitely a big part of who we are being. That we are human beings, not human doings. So there's the emotional piece, and if we are to unlock human potential, we need to be thinking about who am I? How do I express myself? How do I interrelate with other people? So in coaching, relationship stuff comes up a lot. How do I manage upwards? How do I get on better with my peer? How do I lead this particular person to do what I need them to do, or whatever it is? I mean, that's all relationship stuff, which is all emotional intelligence. It's not, we can't have relationship without emotional intelligence. Well, people do, but it's not, they're not good relationships necessarily without the emotional constituent part there.
I agree, and I think we're seeing, in the current coronavirus crisis, that how related we are and how we do need each other to work together. And I always remember the quote by one of my teachers, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who talks about we inter-are. So he's called the community of interbeing. So
Nice.
Right front and center, he kind of says, actually, sometimes I think it's a nice Hindu phrase that kind of says, I am because you are. So this relationship aspect is central, I think. And I guess you can't, essentially can't, the coaching is so much more fruitful, I think, when you work from that perspective, in my view.
Yeah, it takes two to have a relationship. Yes. Let's face it.
And the other thing is, I think actually my next question is, for me, conscious leadership is a journey. It's an ongoing journey. So really, in your journey, in coaching world, wherever you are, who for you is an exemplar of conscious leadership, and why?
So I kind of went back into my history in leadership development and was thinking about who were the people who shaped the way that I talk about leadership development, particularly. And one person is Stephen Covey, who talks about mission, vision, values, and how it's so important to us to be able to make conscious choices, for us to actually know what our own mission, vision, purpose, values are. We might call them something different. We might not like those words, but he talks about living, loving, learning, and leaving a legacy.
Oh, yes.
And that actually getting balance is about spending time in each one of those areas of our life. So it's not about work or life. And so he has 7 habits for highly effective people, and the one that I refer to the most now is sharpening the saw, in particular in relationship to coaches, and that's where the mentor coaching piece comes in, because that is all about sharpening your saw, keeping yourself sharp, as I talked about earlier. So that's what I really love about Covey. And then The other exemplar that I would call out would be Marshall Rosenberg for his work
Yes.
on nonviolent communications.
Mm.
And not only has he written the book, but he's helped people to negotiate peace because they have been able to articulate what their needs are. And there's something, it's certainly work that is ongoing for me about expressing my own needs and asking for what I need. So it's still definitely a work in progress for me. So that's why that one really shows up for me. And then Brené Brown as well, and her work on Daring Greatly, stepping into the arena and doing what we are meant to be doing for the world, being who we are meant to be being for the world.
And thank you for those. I just feel that they are two really, well, three if we put Covey in as well, three really important exemplars, if you like. And for me, I'll just say something very briefly about Marshall Rosenberg, because I've been involved in communities here in the UK and in the US on the West Coast in San Francisco. And really for Marshall Rosenberg's teaching, as you said, this impact of how am I feeling and what are my needs. As a man, really, he was instrumental in actually helping me get in touch with what am I feeling here.
Yeah,
I did have his list taped on my wall. So what am I feeling?
yeah,
very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm really noticing how powerful that is right now in the midst of this pandemic, to enable people to articulate their feelings, and not just what's happening, but as a result of what's happening, how does that land with me? What's it doing inside my body? How am I feeling about it? And that articulation of feeling seems to somehow kind of clear the path for people to then move forward, because they're getting stuck in not being able to just get those feelings out. So I've done a lot of work with coaches recently to enable them to articulate their feelings, not the doings, but the feelings, and then ask the question, and so if that's what's going on for you, what do you need? So yes, Marshall.
Thank you. And I think thank you for saying that. I think that could well be one key nugget that someone listening or watching this can take away, because as we said at this time here, I think it's really important that and maybe they may shy away from it, but actually asking how staff are feeling, as coaches are feeling, because and it can be a place for what might seem a difficult conversation, but in my experience it actually can be a transformational conversation that not only, you said, clears that, actually brings a group or brings individuals closer together because they've shared something of real meaning and purpose through that.
Yeah, so back to Brené Brown, it's that thing about being vulnerable with each other.
Yeah.
And when we see other people being vulnerable, we can be vulnerable, and we see that as a strength. And it really is a strength to be able to be vulnerable together.
Wonderful. So I think if you pull together another quality for me anyway, a conscious leader, vulnerable, and being prepared to share that vulnerability in an authentic way, and I think people know when you're being vulnerable in an authentic manner, and they can feel that.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, and right now in much of the coaching work I'm doing, and the action learning and the team working, that's where we're spending a lot of time, is on emotion and feelings. Because we can't race forward with doing until that stuff has been articulated, or we can, and of course in an emergency we need to do things quickly, but actually it seems to be helping people just to slow down just for a moment to figure out those feelings in order to clear the path.
I agree. I've had training in spiritual psychology, and there's a sense of actually giving a safe space for those feelings to land. And if possible, may not be in that moment, to integrate is really important, as you then quite wisely say, and then you're in a space then where you're able to move forward. Otherwise, my sense is it gets put in a box, but that box will be open at some time. So
yeah, it's like grieving. It'll come back.
It will do, yes.
Mm.
Now, I think we might have mentioned, though, I think this journey, I call it a journey, a conscious leadership journey. And in this journey, what resources have you found helpful for conscious leadership?
So I read a lot. So I've mentioned some: Stephen Covey, Marshall Rosenberg, Brene Brown, also people like Nancy Klein. So she talked about
Yes.
time to think,
Yeah.
slowing down to really think. Also Donald Miller, who has written about living your best story.
That's a wonderful book, isn't it?
Yeah, and I resonate so much with that. About, you've had certain chapters in your life that have taught you certain things if you slow down enough to ponder what they've taught you, but then again there's this conscious choice about, so what do I want the rest of the story to be? I may not have been as conscious as I could have been up until now, but what do I want? What's the life that I want to consciously live from here on in? So that's been a really useful one for me, to figure out, how do I want to consciously live and be, and what's the story that I want to tell with my life?
Isn't that powerful? And I think actually I can see that, again, a coach or a manager actually being aware of their own story, but then also understanding that those they work with bring their story to the table. And as you've just said so wonderfully, they'll be wanting to develop their story. And I think if you're aware of that, actually, I haven't really thought of it. There's then a co-creation of something together, maybe, which honors both of the stories.
Yeah. The stories can interweave for a chapter or two or three, and then go their separate ways.
Yes, isn't that wonderful? And that would be part of the vision, that conscious leadership enables that sort of relationship, which it feels exciting to me that sort of thing can happen.
Yeah.
Now, research, and I say it's Professor Jody Fry, actually at Texas A&M University, he's developed something called spiritual leadership. But spiritual leadership or conscious leadership, I'll stay with conscious leadership. He suggests that inner life is the source of conscious leadership, where inner life is a form of spiritual contemplative practice. So it might be a stillness practice, if it doesn't have to be spiritual. It might include walking in nature or meditation. I know you live in a beautiful part of the UK. What practices have you found helpful and why?
Yeah, so birdsong, it's one that really helps me to reconnect with nature. Whether that's out walking or in my garden, I've really noticed the birdsong this year. I stop and get a real, the orchestra of the birdsong just brings such joy. It is lovely. Also, again, nature, watching the seasons change, that helps me to stay grounded. Hugging a tree, which I know sounds a bit odd to some people, but I have a favorite tree that I run to, and I'll say hello to my tree and have a little hug. But again, there's something about that tree reminding me to stay grounded. So those are all the kind of nature inspired things. And then I keep a gratitude diary as well. In fact, that's a more recent thing that I've been doing during the pandemic, in particular, to keep my spirits high and to be grateful for what I do have, and to notice those things that I'm grateful for, rather than kind of letting them pass by without noticing them. So that feels particularly important right now, to be grateful for the little things.
Well, thank you. And just as you were talking, which for me is a sign of a great conversation, you've birthed an insight in me, because as you were speaking, of course, Marshall Rosenberg, who we both love, talks about what's alive in you. And so there's a sense for me that when we're doing these practices, it touches that element for what's alive in me, and it can differ from person to person, I believe. And that's one thing. And the second thing I want to share, which no doubt you know, but it relates to the earlier part of our conversation, I think the scientists are now proving that actually the roots of the tree go underground, they connect with other trees. So actually when you're hugging that single tree, it's not just the single tree you're in connection with. There's a deeper connection that's actually that you're tapping into, if that makes sense.
That's sending shivers to the spine. It's about the system and the whole forest and what it beautiful.
So it is. Now finally, the question I have is, given unlimited time and resources, what single thing would you recommend aspiring conscious leaders to do?
So leaders themselves, I would say, get a coach, so that you can give yourself the space for reflective practice. It's really not one of those things that we can do alone, because that speaking out loud, untangling the knots that are in our head, it really helps to talk out loud, and to work with somebody who's a professional, who is well trained and credentialed, because they know what they're doing, and they will help you to move forward with who you are, and help you to figure out the story that you want to tell with your life. And then for coaches who are, of course, leaders in their own right, I encourage them to get a mentor coach, and a supervisor. Many coaches these days have supervisors to help them to talk through the clients that they're working through, and how to stay safe and sane with those clients. But then on the other hand, there is this mentor coaching piece that is missing for some coaches, around how to really see your blind spots in your coaching, and endeavoring to get much better at coaching through getting feedback from somebody who knows what great looks like.
Thank you. And I sense in your coaching, and you are a mentor coach, that just that image came into my mind again of this tree, sensing that in that sense you are the strong tree that's reaching out to a number of different coaches. So
yes,
which again, that insight is, although you're working perhaps with a coach at the time, there's a sense that they're all connected in some sense because they're working with you. So there's some sort of flow that happens there, and I think that's a beautiful conscious awareness. And I think the other thing I wanted to mention is the phrase that I like, that if you're looking for a mentor, I always say someone that can hold you in fierce love. And what I mean by that, fierce is a sense of actually they're challenging, they'll hold you accountable, they'll hold your feet to the fire. And love in the sense that you absolutely know they've got your best interest at heart and they've got your back. And it's that beautiful combination, I think, that is so empowering. I know it has been my experience for the mentors I've had.
I'd call that the loving boot.
The loving boot, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. And I know my girlfriend here in London has actually got a picture of a boot on her wall, which I will call that the loving boot now.
Ah, there we go.
She said it keeps her on track, but I shall call it the loving boot. Now, we've talked about resources. So my final, I love Columbo, and he always says just one more thing as his question. So my one more thing is, I know I'm asking you really to share your resources and your offerings, and I know you've got a book coming out, so I'd love to hear about that, and whatever else you want to share with those that are watching and listening, please, Claire.
Yeah, so I will show you the cover of my book, which you can see has trees on it and sunbeams.
Yes, it does.
So there is a theme today: trees and sunbeams.
So for those who are listening, just let them know what it's called.
Yes, it's called Mentor Coaching, a Practical Guide. And I'll say that again because some people hear that incorrectly. Mentor Coaching, a Practical Guide, not mental coaching. So it's in two sections. The first section is how to make the most of mentor coaching for yourself as a coach. And the second half is how to become a mentor coach to other coaches. It is out now. It is on Amazon.
It's literally hot off the press, isn't it?
Hot off the press
as we speak here.
Yes, this week. So very proud of that, and I'm hoping that it will shift the way that coaches approach their continuous professional development, because in my view, mentor coaching and supervision are the two most individually tailored and therefore highest impact continuous professional development we can do as coaches, because it's all about who are we being as a coach. So I'm on a mission to change the way that we as an industry see mentor coaching. It's not just for credentialing, it is for life.
Yes, totally. Yes. And I will place a link below so people can get a link to the book there, because that feels, particularly if you're a coach, and I always say, leaders, coaches as well, that it seems to be a great resource for people to dive into. And I'm guessing if they've listened or watched this far into the podcast, they'll be wanting to get a copy of your book.
I hope so. That would be great. Yes. And if anybody does want to connect with me around mentor coaching or supervision, or indeed coaching to enable them to tell or live a better story, then I'd love to make connections with people.
Okay, and what's the best way that they can do that? I know you're on LinkedIn, you've got a website as well, so...
Yeah, so either they can go to my LinkedIn profile, find me there, message me that way, or they can write to me at Clare Norman Coaching Associates.com. And I'm sorry it's such a long email address. And Claire is without an I, so Clare at Clare Norman Coaching Associates.com.
That's wonderful. So before we close, is there anything else you'd like to say or share?
I think this idea of the connection of the trees just has percolated up for me today. So I'm going to go outside now, listen to the birds, and be thinking about this whole connection to nature and trees and their roots.
Okay, and there is, before I close, there's one final synchronicity here, and you may or may not already have it. Where I am in London, although I'm in central London, I can hear the birds, perhaps because of the impacts. And just today, this is true, just today before I interviewed you, I actually downloaded a new app called BirdNet.
Oh.
And what you do is you record the sound of the birds, and then it will identify which bird it is.
Nice.
Yes, so there's one for yourself
that.
and listeners. So it's called BirdNet.
Thank you.
It's a free app to download.
Thank you.
So Claire, thank you so much for being on the show and showing up in the world of conscious leadership, in your coaching way, in the way that you do. I really appreciate it.
And thank you. It's been a great conversation.
It has, yes, thank you. And just a word for the listeners, actually, if you've enjoyed this podcast and my approach to conscious leadership, then please know I help aspiring conscious leaders develop purpose-led, high-performing leadership teams through one-to-one coaching and tailored leadership programs. So if that's something you're interested in or something you think I can help with, please look me up, David Wetton on LinkedIn, and let's jump on into a conversation together. And I want to thank all of the listeners to this podcast. And if you're willing, please do share a link to this podcast with those you think would truly benefit from this podcast. Because I truly believe that now is the time for conscious leadership. And with all the inspiring, heartfelt work you as listeners are doing, I have no doubt that conscious leadership will become a thriving reality, making a difference for the greater good of all. So until next time, I'll leave you with a blessing from John O'Donoghue. May the light of your soul bless the work you do, with the secret love and warmth of your heart. And so it is.